This is the funniest penguin in Antarctica. His name is Steve, and he's a newly adult Adelie penguin. Now he's about to attend the annual matchmaking convention, but not only did he arrive late, he also got lost. Separated from his flock, Steve accidentally wandered into the territory of Emperor Penguins where Snowchick lived. He had to ask the other penguin for directions. But before he could even speak, he was coldly rejected by this big guy. Steve thought maybe the big fellow wasn't very talkative, so he decided to try talking to a little one. Unexpectedly, that penguin had a bad temper. Just as Steve was about to leave, he was pulled back and beaten up. Steve didn't give up. He continued searching for clues in the Emperor Penguin colony, but being ignored by everyone made him extremely embarrassed. Finally, Steve left this cold Emperor Penguin colony and discovered his own flock wasn't far ahead. After persistent effort, Steve finally reached his destination. Throughout the winter, Adelie penguins spent their time in the Southern Ocean, but as spring arrived, they began returning to their birthplaces to find mates and raise chicks. For first-time breeders like Steve, this habitat was full of challenges. Because Steve arrived the latest, the entire breeding colony was already packed. Steve's first task was to find a suitable nesting site and build his own home. This seemed very easy, but those older, experienced male penguins had occupied these prime nesting spots for years. They refused to let newcomers invade young and spirited. Steve wanted to show off his strength, but was defeated in less than 3 seconds. Young penguins like Steve had to quickly adapt to this crowded and competitive environment because he didn't have much time left. He had to establish his nest before tens of thousands of female Adelie penguins arrived so he could find a mate. Stones were their most precious nesting material. They could raise the nest above ground level, ensuring eggs wouldn't be troubled by cold snow. Since Steve arrived last, he had to work twice as hard to catch up. Steve built a rather exquisite little nest. However, his neighbor had ulterior motives. Steve had no idea what was happening and kept diligently collecting stones, but the more he worked, the luckier his neighbor became. Steve finally realized something was wrong. He had collected so many stones, yet the nest hadn't grown much. He finally learned the truth. But now he found himself in a dilemma. If he went out looking for stones, the bad guy would steal from his home. If he didn't go, his nest couldn't be completed. With no choice, he could only look for stones nearby. But he discovered there was more than one stone thief. It seemed he could only get married first and build the house later. Just then, tens of thousands of female penguins finally arrived at the breeding site. The males would attract the females' attention through singing, so Steve also sang loudly. Soon, a female penguin walked toward him. But when she saw Steve's simple nest, she silently left. This discouraged Steve, and even his singing became melancholic. However, this melancholic mood actually helped him find true love. Her name was Adeline. She first inspected Steve's nest, but she didn't disdain it. Instead, she began the sacred marriage ceremony with him.